Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Today, I want to discuss a topic that is frequently discussed um, amongst some of my students, and I want to share some of my thoughts on it. And basically, the question is, what opening should I play, uh, or what system should I adopt? Now, of course, this is a question that can go, in a myriad of ways, but basically, it depends on your, a lot depends on your personality, what type of, person you are, and as far as what kind of positions you're comfortable in. But in this video, I want to specifically address this question for players that don't have a lot of time to prepare. Because if you have, 5, 6 hours a day just to spend on chess, okay, then you can pretty much play any opening you want to play as long as you have the time to work. So, for instance, if you like the night off is black, by all means, play it because you have the time to put in. But the problem that a lot of players face is they like the night off Sicilian is black, but don't have the time. So what happens is they go into sharp lines unprepared and then get hammered game after game. So you have to find a happy medium. You might not be able to um, you know uh, play your favorite lines, but if you want to win, you kind of have to find a medium and kind of look in the mirror, figure out where you're at as far as your time allocation. If you don't have a lot of time, then you shouldn't even be playing certain systems like King's Indian Defense, for instance. um, you should be playing, if your time is limited, you should be playing systems, for instance, Kala system or King's Indian Attack with white. For those who of you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just be showing them. So, for instance, you know, uh, Kali system, you get like this type of setup, and then of course you can go into this traditional Kali formation, or you can play this Zukertort variation where the bishop goes on b2. But basically, when I use the term system, it means that your pieces are going to end up in the same uh, squares every time. It doesn't matter what your opponent plays, you're always pretty much going to end up with a similar piece location. And this is why they're called, more or less systems. So, for example, say if black played g6 here, you're still gonna end up in the same, same. Sorry about that. You're gonna end up with the same kind of setup. Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad or who's winning and stuff like that, but just so you get the gist. So this will be the college system. All right. Another idea, another system that is played often is the King's Indian Attack. Basically, you're just fee and kettling. Let's just play this way for argument's sake. Let's just say rook e1 there, and then the idea is going to be push the pawn to e5, and knight comes here to f1. This pawn goes to h4, etc., etc. This can also be reached via e4, and it's one of the most common ways that it's reached. So, for example, again, you don't have a lot of time to study. You want to avoid, mainline Sicilian. So play can go, for example, like this, and then say your opponent plays e6, and then now you can go right into it. And then let's say, for example, knight c6, and then you would again play g3, bishop g2, castle, all that good stuff. So let's say g3 right here, knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, castles, and rook e1. And notice how white's setup is basically the same. Okay, so if you're a busy person and don't have time to study openings like the grandmasters do, you have to be practical and make the decision to play systems that are going to allow you to get to the middle game with little reflection. You know that, okay, you won't have any theoretical advantage or anything going into the middle game, but you know that you'll get to the middle game without falling off the cliff, um, and falling into somebody's preparation. All right. Um, and then the time that you do have to study chess, you can use that to study the middle game, and you can use it to study the end game. Okay, now with that in mind, um, I want to make a recommendation of what it say. Let's say you're a D4 player, and what's the best recommendation for a D4 player? That again, we're assuming that you work or you have school, and you can't really concentrate a lot of time on chess. Well, what I recommend to students is to play play the Tronpop Scheme. Now again, you could play the college system, like I said, but I like the Tronpop Scheme better because the results at grandmaster level are just as good as say Queen's Gambit. So not only are you cutting out a lot of preparation time, but you're still playing um, the type of opening that you can smash an opponent very quickly, and also grandmasters uh, play this opening regularly. Okay, now why do I say the Tronpop Scheme? Well, if you play d4, just think of all the openings you have to contend with besides d5, right? For instance, if you play Queen's Gambit as white, you have d4, d5, c4. Just think of all the openings you have to face, that you have to prepare for if you're white. You have to deal with this, right? Albin's counter gambit. Slav, right? It just goes on and on. Even slightly dubious openings, like this Marshall. Uh, and so you catch my drift. You have to prepare for the Grunfeld. Um, well, actually, not from D. I'm sorry, not from D5. But Queen's Gambit decline. Um, Tarish defense. It goes on and on. In other words, there's a lot of preparation. You get my point at the D4, D5. After D4, Knight of 6, you got it's black. King's Indian. So let's say you play again Queen's Gambit. King's Indian defense to deal with. Grunfeld defense, right? Nemzo Indian. Okay, depending on if you play Knight C3 or Knight F3. Queen's Indian. Benoni. And inside the Benoni, you have the Volga Gambit. With the B5. So, in other words, it's just a lot of work. And if you have a regular job, or again you're in college or something like that, you just don't have the time to really become an expert at any of those systems. So what happens is you wind up, and I'm sure many of you are in this predicament. You know a little bit about a bunch of systems, right? You know a little bit about every opening. Okay, and some openings you happen to play better than others. So say you're a Queen's Gambit player, and when somebody trots out the the uh, The King's Indian, okay, you smash them because you have like a real good grasp of that. But then when they play the Grunfeld or Benoni, then you lose or you get in bad positions, or Benko Gambit slash Volga Gambit, you get in these bad positions. Okay, because you become what is called, a jack of trades, an ace of none, and this plagues uh, many players because you're trying to learn, all of these systems, and then you wind up being weak in every system instead of being strong. Now, the Trompowsky starts after this move, Bishop G5, and you avoid all of those openings, all the Indian defenses that start with Knight of 6. You immediately um, avoid all of the King's Indian theory. The thing is even when you go into the King's Indian, how many different variations of the King's Indian are there, right? So I mean, you get into some of these openings and it's like a labyrinth. So Bishop G5 is avoiding all of that. So again, you can focus on this system. Now with Bishop G5, there's only a few main responses. There's Knight E4, okay? There's Knight E4. There's E6. There's D5. Right, just some main, just transposing into the Queen's game, and this is kind of a victory in itself, in that usually, players who play Knight F6, they want to go into some type of Indian defense. So if they wind up having to play D5, that might be a psychological victory in some instances. C5, a lot of players that will play Benoni would opt for that. And of course, you have just D6. Some players just ignore it. And of course, G6, they want to go into whatever they're trying to get into anyway. But the gift of the Trompowsky is that it allows you to control the flow of the opening. Again, are you going to get some kind of big theoretical advantage? Of course not. But the thing is, when you look at the main line openings, you're still not getting a theoretical advantage. So if you have the choice to prepare, 8-10 hours, just to try to keep up on the latest of some obscure line in the Averbach variation of the King's Indian, or you can, prepare less and still get the same type of, winning chances with the line that's easy to play. You're gonna choose the line that's easy to play, which is Trompowsky. So today, this is my recommendation. If you're again a busy person and you play D4, right? I'll make another video dealing with E4 and with D. If you play D4 and again against Knight F6, pick the Trompowsky. And against D4, D5, you can have several choices. One is again the collar system, which is easy enough to play. Or if you want, you can even go for this, which is called, it's people call it the Trompowsky attack. It's not really though. The old name for it is actually the Levitsky attack. Levitsky is named after the player Levitsky. And of course, you can see the difference here is that the knight is not here. Of course, if the knight comes to f6, it transposes. But usually, players in the know will play something like that, knocking the bishop off of this diagonal right here. So after, say, bishop h4, and you get c6, and then the queen winds up coming out here. And one of the differences is, now you can see the reason behind h6 is that the bishop can't come back to protect. So after knight c3, queen b6, and there's some little inconvenience here. Some players try to gambit this pawn, but usually b3 or a move like rook b1 is played. But again, it cuts down preparation. Okay? And again, is white winning or losing? No, you just get a game, and if you prepare this, you save yourself hours of preparation. Then you could just work, get a general position, get a general feel, and then immediately after that, work on your middle game, work on your tactics, more important things that's going to accelerate your chess growth. So those would be my recommendations. I'll play this against d4, d5. Again, the busy person, right? You don't have a lot of time to study. And against knight f6, I will go with the Trompowsky. So real quick, just for some inspiration, we're going to look at a game between one of the great Actually, you know what? They should probably rename this opening after this guy, Julian Hodgson, British Grandmaster, because he really put this opening on the map um, in the 80s, late 80s, and 90s, going into 2000. I mean, he has, if you look on the database and type this guy's name in, Julian M. Hodgson, and he was about 2600 also. And I mean, he wasn't just beating grandmasters, but he was smashing them. Talking about 25 moves, victories, and stuff like that with this opening. So we're gonna look at the game between Julian Hodgson, who was rated 2575 at the time, versus German Grandmaster um, Matthias Valls, who was rated 2600 also. This is from the Bundesliga, 1998. Okay, October 18th, 1998, just to be exact. So after d4, knight f6, bishop g5, e6, which is one of the main defenses chosen here. And from here, there's a lot of transpositional possibilities. Of course, black plays the French against e4. Many times the games can transpose. Um, Here, Hodgson played e3. Now, if you studied his games, usually, basically from like the 80s up to this point, he was playing the move e4, which is still a main line. But this line is more forcing, because as you can see, e4 threatening e5. Usually, play will go h6. Usually cedes the bishop pair for space, and then you get this this type of game right here, and play will go bishop b4, d6 is possible, just holding the center. So you get this type of stuff right here, playing on f4 and castling queen side. You know, many games go like this, for example. And you get this, and sometimes black will take time out to play a move like g5 here, and so on and so forth. Of course, you got to worry about moves like that. So you can't have everything. So for example, a6 to stop that. But then you got f4. And you get all of this stuff going. And the play is very enterprising. Okay, so e4 is a line. But here he chose e3. And this is, again, shows the value of this opening that you can transpose. And with the bishop outside of the pawn chain, play becomes similar to that of a Tory attack. Alright, so the Tory attack is basically, to me, like a better version of the collar system, because in the collar system, the dark square bishop usually remains on c1, or as I showed you, it'll go to b2 at some point. Nevertheless, it's still locked behind the pawn chain for quite a while, and usually waits till later on in the game to get involved. Whereas in the Tory systems, the bishop is already out, and it's having an impact right away. So h6 is played. Hodgson decides to give up the bishop here. Queen takes f6 and plays f4. So you're saying, wait a minute, this looks like a Stonewall. You're absolutely right. This is another another benefit of the Tronpop Scheme. See, when you get rid of that bishop, that dark square bishop outside of the pawn chain, it opens up doors. Okay, that opens up options. So you can play, like I showed you, the idea of e4, castling queen side, attacking like that. You can play Tory type attack, or you can play this Stonewall. So watch what happens. This play is similar to a good Stonewall for white. Because usually, what's the problem in the Stonewall? Let's go back. Usually, the problem in the Stonewall is that this bishop, for white, right, is locked behind the pawn chain. Just like with the black pieces, the Stonewall, usually the problem is this light square bishop. So now with colors reversed, white has solved his problem, right, of that bishop from the outset. And now look how the play takes shape. Now you have a Stonewall, a good version of the Stonewall for white here. So e5, black gets that in. Bishop c4. And now you have opposite sides castles. Okay, and does white have a big advantage here? No, he does not. Does white have any advantage? I would say no. Okay, but white has avoided preparation. Who knows what Matthias Valls had in plan? You know, was he going to play a Benoni? Was he going to play a Banco Gambit, Nimzo Indian? You know, we had to keep our eyes open on the lookout for all of these different variations. Instead, we sidestep all of that and we got a nice position that, of course, if we have been studying, we're going to have, you know, more comfort in the position than our opponent. And at this point, in this age with the computers and databases, that's all we're looking for is if we can be more comfortable in a position than our opponent. Queen d7, Queen e1, and basically what what White's doing here is ganging up on the f file. If you see this pawn right here, is under pressure by the bishop on c4, rook on f1, and now the queen is going to journey over to f2. So g6, d5, trying to dislodge the knight. Now, in this situation, the knight goes totally passive, going back to b8. This would have been more, you know, a little more aggressive. You know, at least challenging this bishop, saying, hey, if I have to move my piece, you got to move your piece. You know. However, the downside is that after, say, bishop d3, then Matthias still has to worry about what to do with this uh, bishop right here. Excuse me, with this knight on a5. So instead, knight b8 is chosen. And so basically, white is now has an extra move. And he plays e4 and strengthens center. Rook e8. That move, skeptical because I'm trying to ask myself, what does rook e8 accomplish here? Perhaps black should have continued expanding on the king side, right? That's where his attack is coming from. So he should have maybe played h5, right? It would have been more useful, I think, than rook e8. But what he wants to do here is free his queen from the responsibility of guarding this pawn. Such a lowly duty for a powerful piece. So knight h4, again, unleashing the right pressure on this. So of course black has to worry about these type of moves penetrating to the 7th rank. So there's rook h7, king h1. This is typical stereotypical move. Not necessary in all cases, but the idea is to, you know, get the king off the diagonal in case of, you know, these inconvenient checks and such. So again, speaking of usefulness, a more useful move would have been to play b4. b4 deals with that idea, and it has the added bonus of gaining space on the queen side and intimidating the black king. Okay, starting the attack over there. So that move is definitely preferred over king h1. Queen d8, and black had a choice here, either, you know, put his bishop here or put his bishop here. So queen d8, he prepares the bishop to come out over here somewhere. There's queen f2, and now bishop d6, blockading this bishop, actually blockading the pawn and making sure the bishop doesn't get involved. So now Julian plays b4, you know, just launching the attack. And I like white's position because it's not really clear how black can advance his pawns safely on the queen side, where it seems easier for white to get his attack in on the queen side. For example, this pawn on a7 is just hanging at this point. All right. So provoking this move a6, you know, creates a hook for white already. For instance, say after a4 and a5 and b5. A lot of times these opposite wing attacks are about speed, who can get there first. And usually the player who's initiative gets bogged down on a particular wing, usually ends up being worse, and that's what I see in this position. Black can't really advance his pawns effectively. Okay, so for example, g5, right, hitting the knight. Well, the knight just goes in the f5, and there's a big hindrance. Because now what? h5 doesn't threaten anything. And again, if g5 later, then knight's going in the same spot. So after h5, white would just ignore it and launch a4. So in the game, back to the game, after b4, a6 was played. And a4 again could have been played here. Excellent move. And rook a b1 with the same idea, preparing the opening of the file, the b file. Queen e7. All right, trying to the queen out, back into action, protecting the f7 pawn. Now a3. A3 is kind of slow here. Maybe a4 is better, but then again, the pawn will be hanging. So perhaps bishop b3 here. All right. Then a4 afterwards. So I don't really like a3 too much, but again, white is better, so he doesn't have to rush. Rook f8. All right. And now we have the ideas of f5 on the table. So bishop d3 is played. And here, white is better, and the pressure causes black to go wrong, playing c5. Now, just right on the surface, this move looks incorrect, because why would you want to open up lines on the side of the board where your opponent is attacking? Well, again, we know that grandmasters know when to break certain rules. So in this particular instance, the idea behind c5, of course, is if Julian was to take immediately, then bishop takes c5, with tempo on the queen, and then queen e1, and then also white's a little better. Black does get a little play here. Okay, that's kind of what Matthias was banking on. Is he says, hey, I'm a little worse, but at least the play is not just one-sided where white gets all the play, but I'll have my chances. So, however, after c5, Julian played an excellent move. He just played knight c4, and black resigned immediately. Okay, and you might be looking like, well, what's going on here? Why did he resign? The problem is twofold: the knight on d6 and the protection of this rook. Let me show you by variation. So again, the move played in the game, c5, knight c4. All right, let's say, for example, rook h8, right? Just going back. Knight d6, queen takes d6, and b takes c5 with tempo on the queen and opening up the b file. Okay, next move coming is b6. Excuse me, rook b6. All right. What else? If c takes b4 here, knight takes g6. This is what I was mentioning earlier about the vulnerability of this piece right here, the rook, because you can see the queen and rook lined up on the f file. Therefore, if f takes g6, you eliminate this piece, right? You make an in-between move with check. Knight takes d6, queen takes d6, and now queen takes f8, and you just win material. So this is why black was forced to resign after knight c4. This position just falls apart. Like burnt toast, basically. Just is not able to hold up to the scrutiny. And that was only 22 moves. So again, I encourage you, if you're looking for something to play against d4 in general, hey, give the Tronpop a try. It'll save you a lot of preparation, a lot of study time, and you can just work on your middle game and end game, especially if you have a job or things like of that nature, family, all of that stuff like that. Work on play the Tronpop and save yourself a lot of headache, and at least you can get good at one opening instead of being mediocre at 10, 12 different systems. So good luck in your chess, and I'll see you on the next video, and I'll make a recommendation for e4 players.